Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. We are live with another broadcast of the Kev Baker Show, coming to you live from the heartland of Glasgow, in the smart land of Scotland. Yes, we are the first smart city in the UK, but we won't be the last. And we go all the way to listeners in Australia, some up in Alaska. We go over to Poland and back to Pennsylvania. And last but not least, Norway to Nebraska. Eventually, I'm going to sound like some advert for the Holiday Channel if I keep on adding to this little intro that I do when we come in. But wherever you are, whenever you are, I'm so made up that you've come and spent the next 2 hours, or I hope you spend the full 2 hours with us, because I think something very special is going to take place tonight. It's a show that has maybe been years in the making, I only recently found out. We're going to be talking to a long time listener to the Kev Baker Show. I take no responsibility for the levels of insanity that I've encouraged or anything else. I'm only joking. But we've got one of our own here tonight. We do, and it's quite amazing to think how long this person's been listening to the show. They're terribly nervous, but hopefully we'll get rid of that as we get going, because it's just two people talking. And when I say we're going to get into some woo, oh, hold on tight, folks. Get the seatbelts on, buckle up, because this is going to hit full woo pretty early. So who have I got with us today? Well, at long last, and I can finally pronounce her name now, we have Maliah here on the show. Malaya, thank you for joining me today. Now, I hope you're not too nervous there. We don't do nerves. I will take your nerves away. Don't you worry about that. But
Aw.
tell us a little bit about yourself and how you found the Kev Baker Show in the first place.
That was in 2012, well, 2011, actually, early 2011, January, probably right around the 11th, but I don't know for sure. I found you while I was in Yucatan. I was researching for my newspaper different kind of truther streams and people who were aware, I guess. Don't like using that word, but at the time, it was a serious look for who is aware that they're setting up Agenda 2020 right now. And so I stumbled across your show from a friend of mine who shared it with me. And since then, I just been listening, hanging
And
around.
here we are today. Yes, here we are today. And of course, you've been on another show. Somebody I've had on the show as a guest. He calls in all the time. Big shout out to Colorado, to our good friend Algo. You've got your own YouTube channel as well. Tell people where they can find your YouTube channel, because I really like the kind of the latest kind of getting together with Felicia. I believe you're also going to be getting together with Luna. I think it's going to take off and be a real good channel for people to follow. So let people know where they have to go for that, Malaya, before we get into the deep woo.
Well, most of that is actually not on my own channel, my personal channel, which is Malia Her, spelled HiYher for the and. But it's over on Renzo Scriber's channel, where I meet with the ladies and we do a weave and just chat with different people coming in who need something to talk about. It's a pretty chill stream, and we try to keep it focused on teaching, but it wanders. But that's over at Renzo Scriber's channel.
Yeah, these things happen when you're streaming. I don't know if it's consciousness that takes over. It's just what happens. You start on one thing. You've usually got really good plans to hit X, Y, and Z points, and before you know it, you're talking about the most random things. And I don't know how it happens, but it seems to be a thing when people stream Malaya. So, yeah, it's sometimes interesting to see where those random conversations can go, though.
Yeah, especially if you haven't had much sleep and you're running for quite some time. It can be pretty fun, especially when you're I like to how do I put this? I like to bring my state of body into a meditative as much as I can. So I have a very controlled diet. I have controlled sleep patterns. I can pretty lucidly stay conscious during subconscious time, so during dreams and these kinds of things. So yeah, I think that kind of fits into the picture as well. I like to see if anybody else is doing that.
So you said earlier on you don't really like to use the word aware. How old were you when you started to maybe think differently? When you started to see the world differently from what most common, normal, ordinary type people see it? Was it very young, or was it something that really blossomed in you later in life?
It was about 24, 25 years old when I started to really recognize, kind of lose the naiveness and recognize the government fingers into where I was living at the time, which was in Texas, the hill country in Texas, where quite a bit of ranches and exotic ranches and different things connected to the Bush administration and Martin Vyeth, all these kinds of things were suddenly apparent in my life at that time. And I spent a good 4 years there kind of going through that, and it ended up leading into the railroad, eventually into Union Pacific. But and Northwest, even later on down the line. But yeah, really, it began about 24, 25 years old when I learned to shoot. When I picked up my first 12 gauge.
So where all have you been then on your adventures since you woke up, for lack of a better term?
Here's a good one. You know the song, have you ever heard the song by Willie Nelson where he goes through Traveling Man, I think it's called. I've been everywhere.
I've heard too much Willie Nelson for anyone my age. My gran, my mom, they're huge Willie Nelson type guys. So yeah, Willie Nelson is kind of ingrained on me. So you've basically been a wanderer then, by the sounds of it, right?
Oh yeah, I started traveling at about 14 years old, and went through some hitchhiking for a while. Traveled as a hippie, went on an off-grid bus. Yeah, I'm on the road definitely. So
what type of places have you visited then? What's like
um,
your number one place that sticks out in your mind?
most of it is the Rocky Mountain ranges, exploring this area where I'm at right now, which would be in the Kootenai, Northwest Montana Glacier National Park area, up towards Flathead Lake.
Now, is this the place that you were sending me links about earlier on today? Is it the Wigwam Trail?
Yeah, the Wigwam Trail definitely is one that I've studied quite a bit, which is an ancient. It's an ancient trail which stems all the way down into Cascade, Idaho, and ends up here, where I'm at. So definitely.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
what makes it stand out as opposed to some of the other ones in Malaya? Talk to us about the strangeness or the wonder of this trail of yours.
Well, Wigwam tends to connect with Bear Lake in Utah and other lakes where Nessie sightings have been recorded. So here it would be Bluebird Lake and Terrealt Lakes where we've recorded Nessie sightings, which is along the Wigwam Trail. So there's places in Cascade, Idaho as well where the trailhead begins, per se, and that's in the Ute and the Shoshone territories of the Native Americans. So essentially what I've been tracking, is there a authenticity? Can we find archaeological evidence of a spirit creature tribe of the oral legends which match the Dogman legends, which match the were-wraith or werewolf legends to the Sasquatch legends, and if these are all tied to one native tribe. So me and a couple of other archaeologist friends have been really digging this up because there's a lot of key names that seem to be continually showing up in this. But I have to note to begin with, we also find over in the Ohio and the Arizona territories a type of dogman that is similar but matches closer to a genetic modification of the Sasquatch, which looks, and I believe is called the Bigfoot.
You see, I was just kind of slowly leading us into the woo, and Malaya just goes right in there. No, this is brilliant.
I'm a cliff diver.
No, yeah, this is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. I told people we would be going full woo. Where do I even start with what you just said there? So you mentioned the Loch Ness Monster, and obviously that I can definitely come into the picture on that. Now, you were mentioning that there's been similar type entities / creatures, whatever people want to call them, in around this location that you're talking about. Can you tell us about maybe one or a couple of the sightings there? What is it we're dealing with there, Malaya?
Well, the two twin lakes that you can see from Wigwam Lookout and that are connected to the main Graves Creek Trail that leads up to this location. These twin lakes have reported sightings since 1910, when the logging companies and the railroad first started investigating whether or not they could get logging wagons up into this area. So we're looking at something extremely remote, very, very rugged, some of the most hardest trails to be conquered in the U.S. that just really began to be investigated and conquered in this way by building roads and such. In about 1920 to 1930 was when mapping started. So there hasn't been much time to try and find any, and it's such a huge land. There's so many archaeological remains, so many petroglyphs up here that in me and my friends' work looking for these things over the past 8 years or so, we've walked past a lot that we didn't begin to recognize until about last year. So one of these is the Dogman Lake, which is located right off of Highway 93, about 20-30 miles north of Kalispell, which is the closest largest city, where you would fly into if you were going to visit Glacier Park. And this Twin Terreal Lakes is, I can't go into much detail, but very clearly we have all around it the marks of the names of the Dogman tribes, of the Kootenai remains, and archaeological structures.
So what kind of archaeological kind of things are you finding along this trail, Malaya?
Well, mostly we want to find rock etchings. Rock etchings are the most authentic, are the most cleanest, gives us the most picture of what's going on. We stumble across arrowheads and pottery and pipes and all of this kind of thing all over the place. So, but it doesn't give us much of a story, not like a rock etching can do. Sometimes if vases and pottery are preserved well enough, some of them can give us a little bit of a story, but they're hard to authenticize. So in history, we have certain degrees in archaeology of what quantifies good proof, literature proof of something you're trying to prove archaeologically that can get copyrighted and put into Library of Congress as proof that these things are actual. So that kind of changes a little bit the dynamic. We're looking at not just investigating woo, but proving it's real. with the Native Americans and these tribes who I work with personally and who orally legend give me their stories, if that makes sense. Trying to synopsis it quick.
No, that is wow. Where to even start with that? And I love it. Not just looking for woo, but literally trying to scientifically prove this. Now, you mentioned that you have a number of friends, archaeologists that you go out with. You yourself an archaeologist then, Malaya?
I am self-taught, so
Okay.
I can't claim the graduate degree, but I can claim my title of archaeoastronomer, which is a kind of a Creative Commons type license.
We
Makes
are
it
definitely
different.
going to get into some
So, yeah.
archaeoastronomy. I'm just writing that down there, just so I've got something. Remember that for later on. So, when you started, what really inspired this then? Did you get to speak to the Native Americans first? Did you find out about the oral traditions? Did you find out about the legends, the myth about the dogmen? Or was it things you had noticed when you'd been out walking and that's what led you then to dig deeper into the stories? How did it all come together?
Oh, that happened in 2012.
Okay.
When I was in the Yucatan, exploring some of the ancient pyramids and understanding the Mayan from the perspective that I was given while I was there.
So the Mayans, let's deal with the Mayans then, because everyone's fascinated by the Mayans. 2012, you were there in 2012, and of course, when it comes to the Mayans, most people will think of 2012. What's your take on the whole Mayan 2012 thing? I've always been a bit open-minded, a bit more flexible, because we kind of tried to make it fit our Gregorian calendar when really we tend to not have any idea what people were thinking about in the past, and we always have to think they have to conform to us brighter ones in the future. So what do you make of the whole 2012, the cycles, stuff like that?
Well, let me start with a decipher of my photo that's up on your screen now. That photo was taken in July of 2012, and it is at Hacienda Cuch Balam, which is translated the House of the Black Panther of the Maya. It's an ancient hacienda that correlated with a very, very beautiful old nondescript pyramid that is pretty much grown over now. So that story kind of began my trail with that photograph when I started to investigate the Cuch Balam of the native Maya, which led into eventually the deciphering of the calendar, but that didn't come until about 2018. It started then. What came then was the understanding of why I was in Yucatan for 2012 and why I was taking a newspaper stance, because that photo was published in the newspaper, et cetera, and is my main journalist photograph. So back then, I wasn't just there for 2012 like most tourisms, came for a couple weeks and left. I started in 2010 my work there and journaled everything that I encountered through my newspaper until I left on September 17th of 2013 and sold the newspaper. The time in between there, I experienced what happened in 2012 and understood and did the best I could to explain to everybody it's not the end of the world. Hollywood is faking this. It is definitely, we're moving into a new age. They're calculating a shift and a change in our universe, and we have about 10 years, which is what they said, to fight and do our best to expose what's happening. And at the end of the 10 years, we'll start moving back for another 10 years and review what we did those 10 years, is what the Maya said again. So that's where it kind of began, looking into archaeology and astronomy together.
Wow. Now, I'm just doing the math there. We've seen how since 2012 it's got increasingly crazy. Time is speeding up, unbelievably so. More and more people talking about that. And that means, roughly, we've got probably another 2 years of descending into deeper craziness before we come out the other side. Would you agree with that?
No.
Okay.
because of the pi effect. Our bet, our number 2, essentially 2 years left, centers us in 2020, where the shift truly begins. Just like with the 2012 shift, 2 years before was when the shift began in 2010.
All right. Okay, that makes more sense then. Yeah, okay, I can follow along with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy math.
Yeah. Even for somebody like me, Malaya, even for somebody like me, I know. And you mentioned as well, this is where you kind of started to, was this where it opened your eyes to archaeostronomy as well? Is this when you started to realize there was something there?
Yeah, I had a friend who showed me, he was also an archaeoastronomer, and he had, over the past 2 years, just that would be 2009 to 2011, had just discovered through 25 years of his research that the pyramid blocks were so shaped and placed that they matched a harmonic resonance similar to a guitar chord. So he theorized that if you could essentially figure out what the sound was of each block, you could build a symphony with it. So another friend of mine who was is an amazing orchestral director and composer from Venice, put together the idea, and they actually did make a composed piece that they played in, it ended up being mid-January of 2013 in the Pyramid of Chichen Itza, but also in Uxmal, which is nearby, but different construction. So it ended up absolutely amazing piece of work, but very guarded. If you were there, you heard it, but other than that, there's no recording of it.
Yeah, it's almost, I would imagine, I mean, you can't say this for many things, but that literally, it's like sacred, right?
The one in Uxmal, yes. I didn't appreciate the Chichen Itza. I just have issues with Chichen. I don't like it. I know it's Aztec. It is not Maya. It was stolen from the Maya, is what the stories say. But the nearby one, Uxmal, is known as the Magician's Pyramid, or more anciently, the Pyramid of the Pregnant Woman. So I have a lot more resonance with Uxmal and spent a lot more time in that pyramid in that place than I did Chichen. In fact, I only went to Chichen 2 times, and that was for December 22nd, 2012, and then right after the concert in January. So I don't like Chichen, sorry.
Now, this one here, I'm taking a look at the picture of Uxmal that you're talking about. I mean, talk to us about this location before we... Well, in fact, we're about to go to the break, okay?
Okay, I need a break.
Yes, we need a quick break. And then we're going to come back on the other side. We're going to find out more about this particular site. But then I'm going to continue the journey to see how eventually it leads back to this dogman and how Malaya and her friends, or how they found out, what got them going, investigating something called the Wigwam Trail. Now, Malaya, you've got a website that I want you to promote to everyone, and I'm going to be asking you a lot more questions about this website as the show goes on. Tell people where they can find your work.
You can check out my site, identitysoulhealing.com, and you can find my contact info, email, phone, everything in there.
Excellent. And people are thinking, Identity Soul Healing? What's that all about? Well, you'll need to stay tuned, because we're going to get into that and a whole lot more on the other side of the break. Share this out. Tell people you're listening to the Kev Baker Show over on tfrlive.com. Don't forget, there's always live radio right here on TFR Live, so don't go anywhere after today's show. The shows, the information, it just keeps flowing. We'll be back after the break with more from Malaya. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, ladies and gents, and we have got a long-time KBS listener with us live on the show today. We're talking about archaeology, we're talking about archaeostronomy, we're also talking about woo, dogmen, Nessie, all the kind of things that make the Kev Baker Show the #1 abnormal, paranormal, strange show, not just on this network, but many networks in many worlds. Yes, indeed. So before the break, we were getting into the site of Uxmal. Talk to us a little bit more about this in Malaya. What is it that really piques your interest about this site?
Well, Hacienda Uxmal was a favorite of one of the only other American journalist who stayed and spent an exorbitant amount of time in the Yucatan. Her presence, she was a column writer for the New York Times and the San Francisco Chronicle. Her name was Alma Reed, but she also penned under some ghost names. But she has lots of articles from the 1940s that kind of spurred the first archaeological digs into the Yucatan when it first began. So again, it's only been since the 1940s that archaeologists have been sniffing around in this area. One of the reasons that Alma Reed began to speak up so loudly and was spurred to write from the Yucatan was she received inside knowledge about the discovery of ancient artifacts containing jade and gold and other precious metals that were being sold on the black market. And so when she started to write about it, it opened a whole nother can or a box, Pandora's box even, when we're looking at the deciphering of the Mayan language and everything that came out after that. So Alma Reed was their only other American journalist, and when I appeared there, and unbeknownst to me, I didn't know any of that history, opened the Yucatan Times, the Maya kind of ran with that story and ended up with being tagged a very popular and very sweet Mayan song called La Peregrina, which is a story of the pilgrim who left her mountains to come and write about the Maya people who didn't have a voice before she came, who would have been completely annihilated if she hadn't stepped up and started fighting for them. So it's very romantic. It's a very romantic state, known as one of the few cities of peace left on the earth. And her people are just amazingly beautiful, and the culture matches the romance that you can find there. It's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere with the Pyramid of the Magician. I mean, that sounds like my kind of place. Is that like it sounds on the tin? I mean, what's the Pyramid of the Magician? What do you know about that?
Well, just to close up Alma Reed, Hacienda Uxmal, which is right next door, still maintains a room for her and me whenever I come into the place.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I spent a lot of time there, and they would open the whole site for me and let me go in without tourists, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm one of the few people that has actually got to climb the Pyramid of the Magician to the top. It's closed to the public. And when I went alone one morning, it was just prior to the spring solstice in 2012. And the whole field of that big open field there at the bottom of the pyramid was filled with the Melipona honeybee, which is a really unique ancient Maya honeybee. There were billions of them, and the hum that came resonated and vibrated from that area was beyond healing. It was just so, wow, very hard to put into words.
We had taken a long look, a deep dive into the honeybee the other night on Freaky Friday. Again, synchronistic that here you are again today talking about this, and I can only, in fact, you know, that's a lie. I can't imagine what that must have been like, but I can totally imagine with the resonance, that noise, that feeling that you probably would have got. That to me is similar to the gut feeling that I sometimes talk about getting. It's not always right, but I tell you what, 99.9% of the time it's right. When it comes to these ancient monuments in Malaya, what do you think it is with frequency and sound that these ancients were well aware of, but yet us today, not so much?
A lot of it has to do with location, but architecture is definitely involved and highly studied, matching what we had in ancient times to the stars and building a pattern in which to track the calendar and numbering of days. That is what most Mayan structures resemble. Things like the Temple of the Seven Dolls is a place that marks the spring solstice every single year, the exact timing, everything, and is totally dependent upon viewing, not calculation, which is what NASA and our instruments use today. This rather is taking the Earth, the location, and placing the correct windows to be able to view from a standing point the full equinox, the full solstice, depending on which one it is. So you can't experience the December solstice in the Temple of the Seven Dolls. That is for the spring solstice. Uxmal is where the winter solstice occurs, which is a place right next door to Uxmal called Labna. And Labna is where the black jaguar comes into play, that being the main pyramid dedicated to that. So there's literally thousands of these kinds of structures in that land. So the archaeologists have had quite their hands full trying to decipher which one is which. I guess, and to add to that, I want to say the Melipona honeybees, which will help you give a picture how the resonance is so healing and why it could be. These honeybees don't have stingers. They're tiny, and they actually live with the Mayan farmers in a household environment. They're like family to them. It's very, very precious. And the kind of honey that they make is phenomenal. It very much matches the Manuka of Australia.
I'm watching this, I'm looking at this right now. Yucatan's Melipona honey, and looking at the bee there. I had no idea the Mayans had this kind of bee thing going on. Talk to us more about this.
Well, they make a honey meat out of that honey. That is an ancient meat, probably, and they stick to is the most ancient recipe for honey meat. And they have a little legend that goes along with it, an oral legend. It's just, I won't get into it right now, but very cute. Goes along with gnomes and trolls and all the rest of that.
Well, we're definitely hitting deep woo here already, aren't we?
Yeah.
So what was it with the Mayans and this, it almost seems like they dedicated their lives to watching the cycles, and as above, so below, mimicking what they've seen in the night sky, in the sky overhead, on the ground. What do you think it was that really set them on that path?
They say that they carry the burden of time, that it was given to them by the deities. And the great creator deity entrusted it to the deities, which essentially translate to a kind of like an overlord over each type of creation that we have. Okay, whether or not that's accurate, I don't know for sure. But what I do know is that their timekeeping is accurate, and the most accurate that we have. If translated correctly, that part is so important. I hate to go Mormon on that because I know that's a Mormon tagline. But if their calendar is properly brought into light as far as its description and what time it actually is, why I say that's so difficult to do, because it goes along with the Maya codexes that were burned by Diego de Landa in the 17th, 18th centuries. These manuscripts contained the prophecies which were revealed to me in the caves of Guatemala, preserved. They actually still have these codexes that were believed and still believed to not exist. Codexes of the underworld, writings on leather that are up to 3,000 years old, which describe our time perfectly, even with details of features of personalities that would come forth in this time. So it has a lot of prophecies that have been fulfilled that are hard to ignore.
Now, are you able to share any of that kind of stuff with us today? Any of these prophecies that either have been fulfilled or maybe hint at one that may still be to come? I know you probably, maybe you can't, but I have to ask.
Yeah, the one that they put in my face was of me, myself, and I. They took me down underground, actually, where the toro fights are held in Merida. I got involved in writing quite a bit about the bullfights, and the owner of the place actually ended up bringing me underground there into a cave, which had on the wall a painting of me publishing, writing out letters that had to do with the Mayan bees and had to do with the defense of against China, which came after Yucatan in 2012. And all of these other aspects, and it just kind of lined out the whole story on the cave, and they forced me to look at my picture on the wall. So it's just, I couldn't interpret it back then, but at the time, there's one for you. I was standing there looking at it, and it was thousands of years old.
This is like, whoa, this is like super uber weird. So listen, right, before I get like totally blown away and fall head over heels and woo here, all right? I mean, you're there. You do the whole the Mexico thing. So what was the next part of your personal journey? Where did the trail lead for you next? You like how see, that was quite clever, right?
It was direct, just like that. It was very direct. The newspaper, I was in a desperate situation, September of 2013. I had come up against China, literally standing there at the edge of the Pirates of the Caribbean beach in Puerto de Sisal, all alone. Nobody wanted to join me in that fight. Except the little villagers, they were ready with their little pikes and stuff.
Oh, you'd have the whole KBS audience. We'd be there now. See, we'd be there. That sounds like Speculation Bay. It sounds like
Yeah.
Speculation Harbor or something you're standing on there.
Oh, it was so bad. I was such a wreck, but it was like, what can you do? You see Dragon Mark coming on the coast to destroy the lagoon, destroy all of the natural mangroves of the area. They wanted to build something the size of Denver Airport on Cancun.
Wow.
And nobody was coming against it. They came in as China comes, bought up the road transportation department, tried to come in with the GMOs and these kinds of things. So it was a multi-level pronged attack. And I did get to the point in September where it just was, no, I've got to throw my hands up, get this newspaper sold, and get the crap out of town because it had escalated to that point. And thankfully, what ended up happening was a woman from France picked up the story. She was into geopolitics, and she organized a historic type of tribunal which gave defense to the Yucatan, and they ended up winning over a year and a half of battle. So Dragon Mark could not be built there.
See, you won.
Yeah, in the end. So I gave up.
In 2020, I like to hear of victories whenever they came, but that's good. I like that. So where did you go next?
2018.
Where did you go next after there then?
Right to my mountain here. I flew directly to Cascade, Idaho, where I met 5 bears, my medicine chief of the Cheyenne, and he brought me into this area where I work now. Yeah.
Now, is that is it this medical, the chief here that you're talking about, is this where you started to learn about the oral traditions, the stories about the dogmen, things like that?
Well, I had been tracking them already through the Mayan lore, but yes, essentially, that was where kind of a piece of that. Most of my training with him.
Now, hold on now.
Yeah.
I want to hear the Mayan take on dogmen, because I don't think anyone's ever talked about that before.
Yeah, theirs goes with the giants. Now, there are still very much a form of giant in Yucatan. I knew one. He was a good friend of mine. And he could live...
Whoa. You can't just drop into KBS. You've got a friend that's a giant. What are we talking about here? Malaya?
He's well known. He's a stonemason, too.
How tall is he? How tall are we talking here?
He's a short giant.
Okay. It's not very often you have anyone come on the show and just drop it in there nonchalantly. You know, my friend the giant, you still get them around today. So anyway, I'm going to try and keep my woo to myself. I'm going to mute up, all right? You can take us into the Mayan take on the dogmen. I'm muting up now.
Well, the story begins with definitely my friend the giant, who started to show me that the rock masons in the Yucatan were still very much alive, that they could carve the same thing they carved back then. And that's how they kept their language alive. They taught me their language and that it wasn't dead and had been kept alive, but as usual was something that was being under attack, was being minimized. So this gentleman, like I said, he's not very big. He's about 6'7", and he has 5 fingers, 5 toes. He's not a 6-finger giant. So there's a difference. There's a classification of giant that was used as slave labor, and there's a classification of giant that was created, GMO made. But my friend was inherited, I believe he inherited just the DNA of this ancient type, and it had dwarfed in size. However, he hadn't dwarfed much in strength. He had record of being a pro wrestler and also being able to lift up 6-ton, 7-ton blocks. Intensely strong, no tricks about it. He carves in the Riviera Maya, he carves stone columns for different hotels and things like that. So evidence of his artwork is all around. In fact, in Las Vegas, there is some too. Now, he started to teach me about the 12 different forms of spirit creatures that the Mayan could change into. The main form would have been what would be, I think, our closest relation to her would be bluebird of the Native American. The bluebird of the Native American, or little bird, also known as Sakayawahia, the Brits called her Sacagawea, was able to manipulate the spirit realm in a sense where she could bring her spirit creature from the spirit into the mortal physical world, was how the legends went. So I received these when I was very young, and then the Maya gave me these essentially same stories of this same woman who could manipulate forces of nature, so to say, so that if the need arose or the time was right, was really about timing, she could bring together these forces of nature to be able to defend her land or her home place. So that's where the trail begins.
Wow. Now, what did he have to say about things like the dogmen when it came to the Mayans? What kind of stories do they have about these cryptid-like creatures?
That would be in the pyramid Ek Balam, Balam, or the pyramid of the ancient jaguar. On this pyramid, it's unique to any of the others because it's filled with the artwork and ancient depictions of all these different creatures at a level of telling the story in dimensions. So at the first dimension, which would be the base of the pyramid, it gives the story of the seven-headed serpent, which it would be the ego and greed and all of these things that comes out of the head of man. This is essentially the Mayans' understanding, ancient understanding of the basal cortex. That is depicted in Ekbalam, of how the spiritual man and the physical man both together battle for the slaying of the seven serpents, which comes out of the ego and pride of man. Of course, relates to women as well, but the story is told from a warrior perspective on the rock. The second dimension that's depicted, which would be the next level up on the pyramid, would be the conquering one, a warrior who conquered those seven serpents. In that, it depicts the seven gifts of spirit of the seven creatures, and that's where you see the dogman, the wraith, the bird. And gosh, you can't have me call off the top of my head here.
I know,
There's
I'm
another...
bad for that. Told you, it's like an interrogation.
There's more. If you look on the Ujmal pyramid, in the center court area, there are doorways, and above each doorway is depicted also the spirit creature, which, as a initiation per se, or as one who was about to go into the third level, third dimension of understanding, they would walk past these doors, and if the spirit creatures agreed that the person had passed their testing, then their spirit creature was melded with the physical form. So when I went through that, it was in the spirit, and I was alone the same day that the bees had come out. And for me, every creature came out of the doorway. I saw it clearly. I went through a whole entire vision of the area that day. It was pretty phenomenal. Hard for me to compress and talk about. But essentially, the lore of this is all over the place.
Now,
down there.
when you had this experience, Um, are we talking about what some people call like a download? Are we talking about some sixth sense, or are we talking maybe ayahuasca, stuff like this? What state of mind were you in? How does this come about, Malaya?
I was in a fully cognitive state, no ayahuasca mushrooms, didn't even have any PPP that day. I was in journalist mode and work mode. It was a very rare moment for me to get the full pyramid to myself. Everything closed down. The only people there was me and my historian and crew. And they let me go in first before, we did our video and we did our production and everything. So the experience was very spiritual. I could see it in my spiritual eyes. I walked through it. I could hear the music. I didn't know what would be coming ahead. As I walked past the doorways, these things evolved and happened. Just follow
That must be
where my
quite
feet put me.
overwhelming, right? I mean, you're there as a journalist, and then there you find yourself. I mean, to have that access alone is amazing, and then for this to start playing out, meeting these spirit creatures, seeing all of this, Malaya, this is amazing, and I thank you for coming on to share this with us today. Now, we're almost at the end of the first hour, so let me just pause there. You'll get 3 minutes of peace without me interrogating you now. Maybe 4 minutes if I shut up real quickly. I want to remind people, come along tomorrow. Hour number 1 will have Don Wiskin on the show. Then in the second hour of the show, we'll open up the phones. Yes, I provide and phone lines for you to decide and have your say right here on KBS tomorrow. But we've still got 1 more hour to go. Lots more cryptids, lots more woo. And then into the soul. We're going soul searching, folks. Don't go anywhere. There we go. Yes, that is today's guest. Typing frantically in the background because I tell you what, we are getting deep into the woo here. I have got Maliah with me live on the show, and before the break we were talking about a location called, I think it was the Pyramid of the Jaguar, and this is Ekbalam, is that correct, Malaya?
Yep, there's a good little picture of the spirit doors. That would be the Jaguar spirit door.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull this up here. But for people out there, it's EK and then BALAM. Now, is this where you had this actual vision of the animals then?
No, that was in Uxmal, though I did get a photograph on the throne of the Jaguar in Ekbalam. Ended up being another place I got a vision, so...
So,
yeah.
When you had this, I mean, what did you make of it at the time? Like I said, this must have been pretty overwhelming, right?
Yeah, at the time, I definitely did not understand what I do now. And they knew, thankfully, the Mayan knew, the good ones, that I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
So they were really kind and patient with me, but yeah, it was pretty terrifying.
You mentioned the good ones there. Does that mean I'm reading into things by thinking there's bad ones as well?
Oh yeah, definitely some bad ones there.
How do you mean bad ones? What do you mean by bad ones? Like just naughty rascals, dodgy people? What are we talking about here?
Maya witches, voodoo, this kind of thing.
Oh,
definitely coming against you in the spirit side.
Wow! And just as we talk about that, the quality of your call has dropped somewhat. We can still hear you. But when you bring up the hocus pocus, the black magic, imagine that happening. So you've had this experience, and then you said you moved back to where you are now. Talk to us more then about your early adventures looking for the petroglyphs and how it all came about that led you onto the trail of Dogmen, Bigfoot, Nessie, and all the rest of it.
Yeah. A lot of it, like I said, started there, seeing the architecture of Maya, the kind of stonework that you can see they have preserved. The end of the trail there ended at the end of the road, translated in Maya. It's called a town called the end of the road, which is Kakshil Kiawik. Kakshil Kiawik is a natural bioreserve foundation for the black panther jaguar by a United States college university that keeps it, maintains it. What they're doing there essentially is getting photograph evidence of the black jaguar still, or the black panther still existing in that area. Very rare, nearly extinct. That village at the end of the road was where I did my last project, which was investigating the Catherwood evidence of a diamond pyramid, which was different from any of the others. Deep in the jungle there is evidence of that, and I made a video that went with it back then. In that one came the prophecy vision from the oral medicine men who were there, who gave to me the path from that point on, which was at the end of 2013, where they showed to me that I would investigate or go into continue archaeological evidence, but on a medicine scale, an herbal medicine scale. And they didn't hint to me that I would continue on down the lore trail at that time, just the medicine and herbs. It wasn't until 2017 that the dogmen and these kinds of things began to surface, with my first sighting of the Kuekshtani Sasquatch in the Kootenay Range, Yak Mountain Range.
Okay, talk to us about that then. I mean, talk us through your sighting. I want to hear about this.
Well, they don't like being talked about, for one, but they've given me permission on this one just because it's necessary. It's come to this point. But my encounter happened at the Yak Music Festival in 2017. This music festival was, it's a yearly event, and it's the Sasquatch Music Festival for the home of the Sasquatch in the Yak. Lots and lots of sightings, lots of people come out here to hunt the Sasquatch. They came to me while I was walking around and getting quite upset at the environment, because it's kind of a no police zone. So it got pretty raunchy, in my opinion, and I was getting mad about it. So trying to cool down, I was walking around in the back forest area, just following trails and singing. And I felt something watching me. It didn't have an angry feeling towards me, but it had the same kind of angry feeling that I was having. So I questioned what it was and if it was coming in peace. And she, a female, came forward, and I only she began in the form of a great big elk, and I watched her change from an elk into a human form. She was very dark, could have been like an indigo black, more like. And she didn't come close enough to me to be able to really distinguish facial features, just that she could change form, was feminine, and her male partner, she let me know, was very close by. Now, we had telepathic communication, and like I do with the deer and other creatures of the forest. When she told me that She was very upset about the celebration, and it drew the Bigfoot, which caused her to go into a war mode, her and her partner in her small tribe, small family. She gave the picture of very, very small, very hunted. And that was pretty much it. She just let me know she was there at the time and then left.
Wow. Talk about wow. Now, you mentioned telepathic communication there. Is this something you've always had, or is it something again that came along later in life?
I've always been able to talk with the animals, but developing just like any other language, it comes with developing. You get better as you go.
Wow. Wow. I'm blown away here. So you have your first sighting then, and then talk to us more about this Wigwam trail then, about some of the sightings there, what's going on, some of the other activity, wherever you want to go, Malaya. I'm going to save the last segment of the show to talk to you about the soul. So we're going to stick on the woo here for now, but I'm really keen to get you into the soul as well, because I want to hear what you've got to say about that. I'm really enjoying this so far. In case people haven't been able to guess, I'm sitting here. I'm literally hanging off every word of your story. So you can take the story now where you want to go. We can go back to the Wigwam Trail. Take it where you want, Malaya. I'll go with you. There you go.
Okay, well, it definitely goes to Wigwam. In August 22nd this year, I volunteered to help with a project to remodel Wigwam to get it into repair. It needed some major repairs. So we made two separate trips this year, and first we took a crew up that did the general maintenance work, and then we hiked up a group of young women who were volunteering and kind of needing it's kind of like those boot camp type things for girls. So they hiked up the trail and cleaned up the area and stuff. During that time, one of the gentlemen who came down gave me a report of a sighting while he was up there. He wasn't quite sure what it was, but he felt like he needed to share with me that he had seen something, didn't know how to interpret it, and believed it had to do with the water because he was overlooking the Terreal Lakes. He didn't want to say at all, because this is a very, very educated man, that he saw the Nessie. But from his description, he made very clear that he saw something hump through the water, form a hump in the water, and then watched it come upon the bank at a specific location that I've identified before and watched closely, that leads to the trail of another sacred place. So when he identified that it had come out of the bank at the bottom of this trail, seriously piqued my attention. Being August 22nd, we're looking at some solstice and higher activity as well in merging. So he said and told me that he saw this creature come out of the water, transform once it came out of the water, and ran like a Sasquatch or a large animal through the bush up the trail.
Whoa, now this is awesome. You know why this is awesome? Because I've often wondered, again, you know me, I don't claim to know anything, but I've often wondered that when we see things like a Sasquatch, the Nessie, Mothman, you name the cryptid, there's a part of me wonders if we're really seeing the same thing, only it takes many different forms. So I don't know, this is just absolutely awesome. So I don't know if that ties in with what you're kind of talking about here, but that's what comes to my mind when you hear about this, going from one medium of the water into something else, the shapeshifter capability. And that takes us to the Kelpies in Scotland. And if there's Kelpies in Scotland, Malaya, I would imagine any body of water has the potential to have these entities in it.
Well, I wouldn't say any body, but certain bodies of water have a mere lake glass effect, like the Terriot Lakes, the twin Terriot Lakes. There seems to be a common theme of a twin lakes being necessary, and a small island being in one of the lakes. So, there's definitely tie-ins to there in your land to Glasgow of being many appearances of the Nessie, similar things appearing.
Yeah, we've got the island in Loch Ness, which is man-made, Cherry Island. It's the only island
Yeah.
in Loch Ness, so yeah, there is that. We've definitely got that aspect of it.
Yeah, Cherry Island. Whether or not Cherry Island, I don't know if it truly was man-made. I wonder. I wonder about that one. But definitely had a castle on top of it.
Yeah, at one point, definitely.
Yeah. Which,
Why are you laughing? Have you been there? Were you there back in the day when this was like a castle?
Oh, maybe. It could have been.
Who
I
knows? Maybe we
definitely
were.
could. Yeah, maybe. It has some faint memories in it, that's for sure. But I think it's funny because I do believe that things like Edinburgh Castle is connected, the Abbey, um, and this lake effect, the twin lakes, because also over at Dogman Lake that I was telling you about earlier, Highway 93, a new discovery of Dogman etchings, is a twin lake area again. And interestingly enough, also it would be kind of like the bottom lakes of the Terriot Lakes. Same water flow, same main river that this water's coming out of. So we're definitely seeing a tie-in to a tiny little spring of water that seems to be the heartbeat of this specific entity, which can appear over Glass Lake Mirror sacred places.
Wow, and of course, even if you look at somewhere like Point Pleasant or the Mothman, there's water. I mean, you've got the bridge, the river there, synonymous with that whole that event. So I
Interesting.
do tie in water. I've for a long time I've tied in water to being a source of these potential thinnings of the veil. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's running water over stones that produces that kind of static, that electrical kind of effect that maybe, maybe it kind of drops the barrier between this world and the next, Malaya. We really don't know,
Well,
right?
I'll tell you, most Christians can relate to Jesus walking on water.
Yep.
Native Americans relate to this in a different way. As an ancient medicine man or woman, one of your qualifications would be the gift of walking on water, appearing as walking on water in spirit.
Wow. I like
So
that. I do like that.
it definitely has some tie-in to there too. I found quite a bit of links that come from ancient scripture too. There's lots of backup.
Yeah, you definitely
For
know your
this one.
stuff when it comes to all this thing. So, what other kind of things take place in and around the area that you're in then? Is there more high weirdness going on there?
Well, you have to consider the duality effect in all things regarding this. We see protectors of the land that are defending against something coming against it. So what I've seen when it comes to, like, you bring up the Mothman, there's a Mothman out there who is a defender, and there's one who looks almost exactly like him, who is an attacker. So making the differentiation of light, or the aura of light around the entity that you're spiritually seeing, because you're right, Kev, about the veil thinning, many more people are going to be very, very aware of these entities in a very short time if they're not already.
Malaya, does that mean there's a Mothman and there's a...
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
See, there's a man. Yeah. I had to go there.
How dare you?
Yeah, have I still got her?
How dare
I do
you?
still have her. Yes, I do still have her. But yeah, so in this kind of way of thinking about things, then, seems a no-brainer. So there's going to be, for lack of a better term, a good Nessie and a bad Nessie.
Yes. But one of the things about the Nessie that is common throughout is that her first appearance before any person or individual, she comes as one extremely scary, very savage. The stories of she comes out to show herself because she's on the hunt. So as
That's
well,
terrifying.
yeah.
As somebody that comes and, born and bred on the banks of Loch Ness, if somebody had told me when I was younger, Kevin, if you're a bad boy, that Nessie's going to come and hunt you and take you away, I think my life would have turned out a whole lot differently. I really do.
I know.
I think the fear of a monster eating people, dang. Now, that's that's the one thing about the Loch Ness monster. I hate the fact they call it a monster, because it's not a monster, in my opinion. We don't really know what it is, but there's never really been anyone associated with, like, say, a sighting and then they've disappeared. So touch wood, Malaya. Hopefully, that bad Nessie isn't around anymore, or at least it's found its food somewhere else.
Well, I can definitely give some understanding behind that one. All right.
Oh, I like
So
it. I like it.
she makes very scheduled appearances. However, what I've seen is that it is an intense amount of warfare for her even to come to a point where she can exit the water. So if things aren't accomplished correctly, it is not the good Nessie per se that comes out of the water, it's the bad one. So there has to be a faith, essentially, and a sequence of events that happens. We have the stories of the past of what needs to happen if someone can decipher those. Otherwise, every other appearance, pretty much for the past, I would say 400 years, has been the evil one coming out.
And that, of course, that 400 years takes us back to when that castle would have been there as well. Just throwing that in there. I kind of like the way you're going with this. I've never really thought about things this way. My family, they've had their own sightings, obviously, of the monster. But something right now, I mean, we've had not one but two really anomalous sonar returns, and people are, I'm talking about sonar experts, are saying this needs more investigation. Now, the reason I bring that up is because you mentioned it yourself, the thinning of the veil. And I've always thought, since I started talking about CERN, since I started looking at 2012 and all that stuff as well, the change of the age, this thinning of the veil, the boundary between our world and the next, in my mind, it would be one of the symptoms of us going through a great change. And I think we're seeing it. What do you think? Do you think it's happening? What can we expect in the next couple of years? What do you think, Malaya?
Well, yeah, we are absolutely in the Great Reset, as they call it. The thing is, the way the NWO would like things to go is not necessarily the way things are going to go. They actually, in a sense, have scrambled desperately to try and put this all together with a lot of fake hope on their part, to illusionize what is actually happening with this of the tearing of the veil or the thinning of the veil. Why would they be so desperate about that? Well, with the coming of this reset, it is the final full explosion too, of what all that witchcraft is all about, what they really did, how things unfolded for the past 400 years, because we got 400 years of their crap, literally, to go through. and unravel and prove that we have maintained warrior status mode since then in doing the very best that we can as weak, as lowly, as humble servants, rather than the warriors that they have taken on, you know.
So, aside from their hocus pocus and the magic and the way that they want the world to turn out, it sounds like you've had a glimpse at the way it will turn out on the positive timeline, if we can call it that, for lack of a better term. How does it look, Malaya? Does it look good where we're going?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's great. It's right back to the ancient way. It's back to the way things should be. It's a trick in step by step, stone by stone history of the way Creator saw our involvement and participation in this past 6,000 years. Storyline.
Whoa. So what do you make of it when you hear me talking about the simulation aspect of our reality? You mentioned creator there, and I mean, the way I look at it, yep, creator, God, I don't mind what people call it. It's definitely not all random, right?
No, it's Creator Chief, and he took a back seat for the past 2,000 years and allowed messages, really, letters, to be delivered, and pretty much how it went.
Now, when you say
as we
allowed
steeped
letters,
darker and darker.
what do you mean by allowed letters, allowed messages? What do you mean by that?
The way it looks there is definitely the DNA sequence ladder that the angels ascend and descend upon. If a soul has attracted the attention, or the light is coming of them, the golden orb, they have ability to write a letter and send it to Creator. Not everybody has this. You have to have certain aspects of your soul lit up for him to even really notice, just the way it is. He doesn't pay attention to the wicked. He doesn't.
That's me bombed out then. I am so bombed out. Oh,
no you're
point.
Beloved.
No point
so
me
beloved.
no point me sending any letters.
Everything you say.
Trust me.
Point in it. It's so true on your part.
when we come back after the break, trust me. I hope Malaya can't see into my soul, or that could be very, very bad for the future of this show. But we're going to be talking about the soul, because Malaya has a website that I'm going to tell all of you to take a note of here. And it is called identitysoulhealing.com. That's identitysoulhealing.com. And we are going to be exploring the regions of recognizing the dynamics of your specific soul and light upon your full potential of the ancient and hidden meaning of soul identity. That's what we're going to be getting into on the other side. So I advise you all buckle up even tighter, because it's been a great show so far, but I think it's going to go to not the next level after the break, possibly the next dimension. You're listening to Malaya right here on KBS Live. Gentlemen, and don't go anywhere after today's KBS, because coming right up after the break we have got the brilliant Suzanne, and she'll be inviting you to transcend the Matrix. Yes, that's right, Transcending the Matrix is up next here on TFRlive.com. Maybe you haven't heard that show before. Why not give it a try out? Maybe it's going to be something you like. There is something for everyone on TFRlive.com. There's going to be stuff you love, there'll be stuff you hate, but that's what's brilliant about free speech radio. We cover everything over on tfrlive.com. And we do it with a smile on our face, and we do it without letting differences come between us. Because never forget, division is the mind killer. And by dividing us, they can conquer us. And they have been doing for eons and eons and eons. And now we're going to be exploring the soul with our special guest today, Maliah. She has got a website called Soul, wait till I pull it up here, identitysoulhealing.com. And just to read what it says here on the landing page, it says, explore the regions of recognizing the dynamics of your specific soul and light upon your full potential of the ancient and hidden meaning of soul identity. Uncover the everlasting memories of the intrinsic value of your own given name, the dynamics of your place of origin, melded with the archaeoastrology of the time of your birth. Our goal is to craft a carefully and intimately connected ciphering of these aspects so you can establish the well-being of your mind, body, and soul. So with all that said, let me go to the wonderful lady behind this website, Maliah, long-time listener to the Kev Baker Show. And I've only really become aware of all of this stuff in the kind of recent past. I almost said recent future there. That'd have really confused people. But Maliah, talk to me about this website. Talk to me about the soul. What is the soul? Do we all have one? And should I worry about how wicked I've been?
Well, yes, we all have one. If you're living, breathing, you have a soul that can be awakened. Whether or not it's sleeping or awake is dependent on you. Our souls don't receive cleansing until they become awake. At the moment they're awakened, then they receive a form of baptism or a water cleansing. Which is why the scriptures refer to a rebirth happening, a coming out of the womb when the spirit is reborn, is how English translates it. Essentially, that process is coming to the conscious awareness of the subconscious soul, the existence of the realm of the spirit. That comes and happens when a person recognizes their own identity, the significance of their own identity, their birthplace, their birth name, and birth date. All in the Mayan make an understanding of a beginning form or a molding point of the soul. The unique individuality of every moment is what they consider. And with the three different movements of the wheels that the Mayan keep record of time with, they also give interpretation, and where astrology stems out of, essentially the oldest form of it that we can find, comes from the tracking of the 12 dynamics of, or the 12 doors in the stars that relate to the star signs. With this data, the correct interpretation of your soul, what its personality, unique individuality is, helps one like me who's able to awaken the soul, touch the soul to wake it up, comes into play. Normal astrology readers or these kinds of things don't carry the tools of the Mayan interpretation of calendar. So that's what kind of, I guess, sets us apart from other people who maybe have attempted something like this before.
Whoa, there's so much to unpack in there. Do I even dare ask you what my birthplace, name, and date mean? Do I even dare go there on air? Is it something I want to know? But if I was to give you that, what you're saying is there's a direct interpretation to do with the calendars, to do with the cycles, that theoretically that the Mayans could could produce, and I'm thinking you could give as well, right?
A birth chart, in essence, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, talk to me more about the soul then. You mentioned identifying who you are.
Well,
What do you mean by that?
that comes with name, with the understanding of your name. When a soul, is given not only their astrological reading, which would be time and date, location of birthplace, but given an interpretation of their given name. In today's world, where most of our given names of the range X generation and on, born from 1974, continuing till about 1987, was when this generation of indigo children kind of is conglomerated. And now indigo children have the gift to be able to awaken other souls. It's part of what this cycle is given to even the playing field here, in a sense.
So,
Now,
are you an indigo then? Are you an indigo?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, a very special kind one. So yeah, in your interpretation, I understand what your interpretation is. So I can say yes by yours, not other people's.
Okay, okay.
But when it comes to a birth chart reading of you specifically, Kev, I think what I see coming forth is the regression that we do together with Jason coming forward in the ancient realms and what we have planned with Luna. This, what I have seen, will greatly reveal your life path, but it needs to be not quite so live as right now is in introduction. But yes, I have your birth chart. Yes, I understand and have seen you in many past lives and where you fit into this picture. But you're not ready for all that right now.
Wow. Okay, so, you say not ready. What does it take? And I listen. I agree with you, but what does it take to be ready to face one's true history, complete history? I'm trying to think of the correct term to even give it.
Yeah. Have you heard the stories of the Swan Lake?
No.
Okay, think Sleeping Beauty, Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
All right. Essentially, it's following those same lines, but on a way more historical accuracy sense. So, to be ready, somebody like you is very different than others. Your path, very different. So that's why it sets you apart than others who are ready to receive this.
Now I'm intrigued.
It's very
now I'm
difficult to explain, but yours is so sensitive that things have to be taken at a very, very timing pace. Very important. Otherwise, it's just all disrupted, and the ripple effect that we're going for isn't made. Frequency, waves, and vibrations.
Whoa. Now you're talking my language. So what we're saying is, for the listening audience out there, I'm obviously going to be speaking a lot more with Malaya off air. Hopefully explore this further, and hopefully once I learn a bit more, then we can all hook up together. And Jason comes into it somehow. Told you I knew you, Jason. But yeah, we're definitely, for the audience out there, you're probably wishing we get right into it now. No, this is my previous lives we're talking about here, so I'm not ready to share that just yet. I don't even know about them, so we will work off air on that one for sure. So what can you talk about more generally then about? Well, put it this way. I think last night or the night before, can't remember when it was, but it's almost like I can't even remember who I was talking to, but like we've chosen to be here at this time because things are so crazy right now, because we're going through this changing of an age. Is there something to that? Can we choose a time to be alive?
Yeah, we get to choose as we're coming in. Um, i- i- there is a sense of choosing, not necessarily your timeline, but even then, by according to how you performed in the one before that. What was there things left unfinished? Was your life taken wrongfully? It's given back. You're reborn again. In a sense, your DNA is extended. Or are you truly completely wicked, don't deserve life again, and your seed is cut off? That happens too. So, through a process of events of 6,000 years of thinning out the field, per se, to discover what kind of creation we have now in humanity, we're coming to a final battle that's very clear, separated wheat from tares. We're over here, they're over there burning. Real clear, you know? So to bring a very quick way to answer your question of when a person is ready to face their soul, to awaken their soul, it comes to calling. You know, when you're called, you're ready. When it becomes apparent that this is the thing you need to do, and the only thing you can do, in a sense, it's time. You know, and people like me are just placed in your path when it's time.
Deep woo. So you have appeared, and bearing in mind you've been listening to the show for years, and now you've just really become more prominent in my digital world over the past couple of months. Jason says I'm going to get freaked out when he tells me what Luna and Malaya told him. Holy bigoli, I don't even know where to go now. I'm on the edge of my seat. Part of me wants to know what you told Jason. Where do you want to go with this, Malaya? I'm scared to ask in case you reveal some of my wicked history. I'm only joking.
Well, the only thing I can reveal about the Jason episode with Luna, which was, wow, I had just as much fun as they did, is the man in the green cloak, the messenger with the bugle horn, that links all of this together since the 17th century. So you're part of that drama.
A man in a green cloak, wait a minute, a green cloak, a bugle.
Yeah.
And I'm mixed up in this somehow. This sounds like, oh, dang, dude, this is getting deep.
Yeah, super, super deep. It's
so
fun.
let me ask in general terms then, right? Do we do this time and time again with the same people?
Oh, yeah. It's been cycling every 100 years.
So I've known you before.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know. But I don't know it.
Oh, well, you will when we get you all the way understanding what your name means.
Oh, this is one of these shows that's going to leave more
Can't wake
blanks.
right up. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Wow. So what can you tell? Well, I don't even know where to go now. I'm stuck with a bugle and a green cloak. Where do you want to go, Malaya?
Well,
let me ask you this. Let me ask
fun.
you this, right? For anyone that's interested in this kind of thing, when they come to your website, I mean, what is it that you do? Do you regress people? Do you just look at their charts? How do you really get to the bottom of their lives, plural?
Well, there's two things that happen. One, because I have such acuity awareness in the soul spirit realm, I see them coming before they arrive. So it really depends on the soul as I respond according to what is necessary. If there's timidness and fear, then I wait until the time is right and things develop. But most importantly, it's a friendship. It's a reaching out into, okay, help me understand who I am better. Help me understand what my name is and why I'm placed here right now, which is what I do. But number one, it's in crisis care of the soul. So it's looking into, the only reason we would regress is to look at past life wounds, DNA soul wounds, which have transferred into your next life. We're looking at those in order to, just as any medic would, open the wound, look what happened, and put a healing, a cure upon this, rather than what Western medicine loves to do, which is slap a Band-Aid on it, leave it infected, don't pay attention, cover it up, mask. Put the mask on, essentially. So we're looking at even some painful experiences, because just as in anything else that has to do with wounds, the more infected, the less attention it has been given, the harder it can be to look into this. But I can say I take on, just because I've been through it so many times and it's my gift, I take on the pain so that the person that I'm healing through this does not have to experience the soul trauma that they went through. So it balances and equals out. So it makes it not quite so difficult for the person to open the door of their mind and look at what happened to kind of stump their growth along the way.
So what can you tell us about any of your previous past lives?
I'm very regular. I show up every 100 years and blow everybody's minds when I show up. I don't know. I'm hunted. I don't seem to be able to be killed. Yeah. And it's a big, huge fight.
You sound like the Highlander. I'm telling you.
I am.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like here. This is pretty. This is really deep stuff. Really deep stuff. How do people react when they find out about their past lives? Have you ever had anyone really negatively react to finding something out?
Not necessarily, no. It just depends on the person themselves, how quickly they are attentive to the wound, how long it takes for them to come to realization. I leave so much dependent on the soul itself, just as Creator does. When you're ready, I'm here, is the idea. Come and find me. I left breadcrumbs all over the place.
Now, you also mentioned how I call it animal whispering. You had said in a chat one day that you have astrally connected, been with my cat. What's that all about, Malaya? What's that? What are you doing with my cat?
Well, cats are doorkeepers. They're guardians of the spirit world. And so in order to enter into someone's spirit boundary, you have to get permission from their resident cat, whether the cat is living within the home itself or around the house. There's always one nearby. That is what I meant by that.
So
Your kitty likes me. She lets me in.
I'm busy worrying about Big Brother, the surveillance state, and little did I know I've got astral people creeping about my house as well. What's that all about?
I think it has to do with the Loch Ness. We can't help ourselves. We're a bunch of Highlanders as it is, and we know how the hobbits live. It's just a big place.
You hear that, Jason? She basically just called me a hobbit. She has been looking at me in my house. I hope I was behaving when you visited Glasgow. That's all I can say. But this is truly. I'm very rarely lost for words. But the fact that you know something about my past lives that I don't know, I'm intrigued. Utterly intrigued. We've got about 5 or so minutes left. What would you like to leave the audience with today, Maliah?
Well, the authenticity of past lives is proven as we investigate more. What I mean by that is, as we go through this in a natural creator way, a lot like prayer, what you'll discover is that, yes, many things do click and link, and you'll produce the memories yourself. it's just what happens in the authenticity of it. Oh, I remember this, you speak. And this brings the link to the rest of the connections as we truly help use, what's the word, in healing, healthfully regress a soul to be able to look at things like that.
So like
Not necessary for everyone.
So like David Icke says, we have to remember who we are.
Yeah.
Oh.
Remember the meaning of your name. Yeah, that's so important.
So does it matter if I go with Kev Baker or Dave Baker? I suppose I should really stick to Kevin, right?
Well, they both are very real, so you decide.
That's worrying as well. The fact that Dave,
I know,
Dave
right?
is, I know, yeah, he
Dave's
knows
an
as well.
honorary shit.
Yeah, he's damn, you've really melted my mind. Totally melted my mind. We're going through some pretty horrid times in 2020. It sounds to me like you've had a glimpse at what may lie in the future, the more positive road, if we take that. And there's a whole heap of stuff out there right now. The whole negative stuff has been pushed big time. But let the people know so that they can get a taste of, so they can picture, so hopefully that they can help manifest things onto this positive timeline. What's it look like, Malaya?
Really, I hear the message of be thankful for Creator. Remember, things happened in the native way 2 days before this Thanksgiving Day, when we truly met together, brought together the understanding of soul and spirit in the days back then. And we're doing it again, definitely. And this is a good path and a good way where Creator comes in to stabilize these things. So keep the faith, keep the hope, regardless of what is showing right in front of your face. The truth of it is Creator wins. And the earth goes back to ancient.
And is 2021 going to be even crazier than this year? I suspect it will be.
Oh, hell yeah. It's going to get real in 21.
How did I know? How did I know? So, Malaya, tell people again where they can find your work, where they can follow you. Absolutely mind-blowing. Thank you for joining me today. Deep woo, but I tell you, you've left me with a lot more questions than answers. It's a good thing. But yeah, let people know how they can have their soul identified.
You can find me at my website, identitysoulhealing.com. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Maliah, hi, her. That's a little difficult to find yet, but primarily my website, and where you can contact me by email, which is the quickest.
Yeah, just looking at this website here, very, I tell you, like I say, and the audience will know this, 1,410 shows. Usually by the end of the show, I've got so many things on my mind and I've got these questions to ask, but I've been stumped by the way that, like we've found out here, Malaya knows more about me than I know myself. That's a very, weird feeling to have, folks, but I tell you what it does. It means that there's more shows on the horizon, because I would like to think it wouldn't take me too long to man up and get ready to find out what I've been doing, who I've been, where I've been going, and how the hell I ended up here, and where we go next. So I'm going to get that bit out the way, and I'm sure that Malaya will be back with us sometime real soon. Maybe with another couple of the ladies as well. I'll mute up and we'll let it be like a ladies' night. No toxic Kev available. That sounds like a good idea. But I'll give the last word to you, Malaya. Thank you again for joining me tonight. And we'll definitely talk after the show here. And we'll have to get you back on in the near future. We'll probably have to get Jason on as well. But yeah, thanks so much for this first conversation of many.
Thank you, Kev. This has been not as nervous as I thought it would be, and I really appreciate it. I think we definitely went down the right trails, and Speculation Island is just so awesome.
Yes.
I love it.
Yep, I'm gonna build you a shack on Speculation Island.
Sweet.
We're out of time, folks. Remember, transcending the Matrix next. Don't go anywhere.